Hi everybody, this is Dr. Joe Coster from the Winthrop English Department. As some of you may know, the MLA, or Modern Language Association, changed a number of elements in its citation format this summer, and this PowerPoint will give you an overview of what the major changes are in new MLA and show you where you can go for help to learn this new style system so that you can document materials correctly in your Winthrop classes. To begin, you should know what the MLA is so that you know why we have MLA style. MLA is the Modern Language Association, which was founded in the late 1880s as a way of giving the modern languages, that is to say English, French, German, Spanish, Italian, etc., the same respect that classical Greek and Latin had in schools. Over the years, it has evolved until it has become one of the leading scholarly organizations in the humanities, and now it represents Greek and Latin too. The MLA serves as a political leader in the academic profession, arguing for things like more diversity in classroom teachers, better treatment of LGBTQ people, things of that nature. And it still publishes one of the most influential journals in literary studies, the journal PMLA, and it is the compiler of the standard bibliography for literary study, the MLA International Bibliography. Since 1938, too, it has been a leader in helping people know how to document their research in ways that other scholars can find it. And that's with what it calls the MLA Style Guide. And you may ask, well, why do I need to know MLA style? I'm not a literary researcher. Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, MLA is the most widely accepted documentation system in the humanities and arts fields. There are other styles, such as Chicago Manual of Style, which you may have called Turabian in high school. And there is, of course, APA in the social sciences, and Council of Biology editors or Council of Science editors in the natural sciences. Every field has its own rule book. But MLA is the default documentation system for a lot of courses at Winthrop, particularly Writing 101, HMXP 102, CRTW 201, and a number of other courses. So it's a style that many Winthrop instructors will expect you to know and to use. Those of you who have already started learning MLA, whether you learned it in early classes here at Winthrop or perhaps in high school, may be going like, okay, I knew it. Why did it change? Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, publishing is changing so fast. We used to just assume that people would publish in books or in journals, but now there are blogs and websites and Reddits and subreddits and Tumblr and Facebook and all these other places where people can publish things on the internet, electronically, in various forms. And it was just too hard for the MLA Style Guide to keep up. The 7th edition of the Style Guide was over 300 pages long, and it still didn't cover everything. All right, and the forms were very picky and confusing, which many of you knew. So what the MLA decided to do with this revision is to change its emphasis from memorizing a form for a particular source, like how do I cite a tweet? How do I cite a volume in a series with a translator and an editor where I'm working with the introduction and it's all in Dutch? They decided, instead of having you memorize that form, to understand the rationale for citing sources, to make it easier so that if you knew the rationale, that no matter what source you're confronted with, you should be able to figure out how to document it. Now, as I said, the 7th edition of the handbook for the MLA rulebook was over 300 pages. The new edition is about 140, so you can tell they've slimmed down and simplified it considerably. And that should be a good sign for all of us, that it's going to be a little bit cleaner and a little bit quicker to learn how to use MLA. MLA citation, as you know, has 3 parts. The list of sources you have used, which is called the Works Cited page, not the bibliography, of course, which appears on a separate page at the end of your text. And then there's the parenthetical internal citations and the signal phrases that introduce sources. Almost all of the changes in 2016 MLA 8, have to do with the Works Cited page. So I'm going to focus on those for most of this PowerPoint. At the end, I will hit the small number of changes that show up in the internal parenthetical citations and introductions of sources.
What MLA has decided to focus on for elements in your works cited list is a list of 9 possible elements. And they may not all be there, but they simply haven't, MLA said, okay, this is the order in which these things will go if they are there. And these are the punctuation marks you put after the elements if they are there. So you have the author, last name first, followed by a period. The title of the thing you are working with, followed by a period. The title of the container, which is kind of a messy metaphor. It could be the name of the periodical the work is in. It could be the name of the box set. It could be the database, etc., etc. I'll talk about this in the next slide. That's followed by a comma. Other contributors, such as an editor, a producer, a translator, followed by a comma. The version, second edition, third complete edition, director's cut, whatever, followed by a comma. The number, volume and issue number, things like that, comma. The publisher, followed by a comma. The publication date, followed by a comma. And the location. Location is the iffiest one, in my opinion, looking at the new MLA handbook. Location could be, if you have an essay that's in a collection of other essays, the location could be the string of page numbers that your essay is on. If it's a disc out of a box set, it could be which disc it is. Sherlock Series 3, Disc 2, something like that. So the location is kind of the iffy one. It's the thing I think you'll have to look up the most often. What does it look like in actual practice? I'm going to use the simplest example, which is a book. All right, and here is a book, Jenny Jokins's Women in Old Norse Society. You started with the name of the author, last name first, followed by a period. Then you had the title, followed by a period. The title was always italicized. Then you had the place of publication, followed by a colon. And then you had the name of the publisher, abbreviating things like university and press, followed by a comma. And then you had the year of publication, followed by a period. And then you had the medium or mode of publication, followed by a period. So that was quite a lot of things to keep going in one simple citation. Now, in the 8th edition, you'll see it's remarkably stripped down. And this is meant to be double-spaced, but for some reason on my screen it's looking single-spaced. But remember, it's double-spaced. Again, the name, nothing about the way you do the name of the author or the name of the book has changed. So it's last name first, comma, period, the title, italicized, period. But here's where the changes come in. You skip the place of publication. You go right to Cornell University Press. The colons are all gone, and it's now just a comma, and just the year of publication, 1995, period. And the medium of publication is gone, so there's no more print or web or however you found it. So this is the stripped down version. You just have the author, the title of the source, the publisher, and the publication date. And something as simple as a straight book that's only got one edition, things like that. So it's much cleaner.
Citations now include the containers. And container is the metaphor, and it's kind of a messy metaphor, that MLA chose for you to know about what the form is, where you found the source you're citing. It can be a very simple thing, like I found it in a book, I found it in a periodical, I found it on a website. Or it could be a nested series. It's in an episode that I watched on Netflix. Or it's a comment on a subreddit that I saw it was shared by somebody else on Instagram, and I saw it on a Tumblr or a Facebook page. It's like one of those Russian matryoshka dolls, you know, where you have containers within containers and containers. That's the metaphor that the MLA has chosen to use. One of the biggest changes you will see in 8th edition MLA is added back some abbreviations. In the works cited list, you will see the abbreviation volume has come back, the abbreviation for number has come back, and the abbreviation for pages has come back. So instead of a citation that in 7th edition would have looked like this, something from the South Atlantic Quarterly, volume 92, number 4, which appeared in fall of 1993, and is on pages 627 to 45. Now it will look like this. South Atlantic Quarterly, volume 92, number 4, fall 1993, pages 627 to 645. So all of those abbreviations have come back for clarity's sake. A big change in 8th edition MLA is that URLs are back for any source that you find on the internet. Now you will list URLs for any web source, but the MLA doesn't want you to include HTTP: or HTTPS in your citation, because that will make the links go live, and MLA doesn't want them formatted as live links. MLA has also done away with the silly angle brackets, so you no longer have to put the square brackets or the pointy brackets around URLs. They're no longer necessary. What MLA has encouraged you to do is to look for the permanent identifier if possible, so that even if a web page changes its location on the internet, a site goes down or they rename everything, something like that, you can still find it. Many sites now include what we call DOIs, Digital Object Identifiers. And those are stable locations that are tagged onto the actual document itself, so that no matter where the text is on the internet, you can find it by citing the DOI. So here are two examples that you might see if you are looking at citations now on the internet in MLA 8. The first one is for Serena Guaracino's article, Africa as Voices and Vibes, Musical Roots in Toni Morrison's Margaret Garner and Desdemona. It appeared in Research in African Literature last winter, volume 46, number 4, pages 56 to 71. Now, notice, here we've got the container, because it was in JSTOR. And then you have the URL, beginning not with HTTP, but with www, and going all the way down to the end of the URL. Now, this URL is a little bit interesting, and this is why I picked this to show you, because this URL actually has the DOI embedded in it, but you wouldn't just pull out the DOI. If you're citing something like this, you start from the beginning of the URL, put the whole URL in. When you find something that just has a DOI, this is what it looks like. Here's an example, Claire Langhammer's Love and Courtship in Mid-20th Century England. This is an example from the Purdue Owl, by the way, and I thank them for letting me use it. You have the normal stuff that you've got, volume, number, pages, and things like that. The name of the container, ProQuest. But now, instead of having a URL, ProQuest gives you the DOI. So you just put the DOI, lowercase, and a colon, and the DOI identifier right there, and then you have it so that it would be permanently archived. What the MLA is intending with this is to acknowledge that, yes, the internet changes about every nanosecond, and something can be there 1 minute and you go back a couple minutes later and it's not there anymore. Things have been changed. So they're attempting to come up with a more stable way, a more consistent way of being able to identify things you find on the internet without having to worry about links being broken or other problems with identifying things. Another change you will see is that the MLA now doesn't require you to spell out the names of a person whose username is well known in social media. Maybe it's somebody on Tumblr who publishes under the name Cumberbatch Web or something like that. Or it's Neil Gaiman, whose social media presence is always identified as Neil himself. The MLA says if that source name is well known or a pseudonym is used, you can now use that screen name instead of spelling it out. So if you, for example, find a tweet from the New York Times opinion page, you can identify it as @NYTopinion, which is their Twitter name, rather than spelling it out New York Times opinion pages on Twitter. You don't have to do that. Where this gets really convenient is where you have, for example, groups who provide material. There's a group of journalists who are very concerned with how to educate students about current events, and they go by the name Facing History and Ourselves. And you don't know their individual names as journalists. You can find them if you really, 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 really dig, but you don't know that. But say you wanted to cite their excellent materials on YouTube about how you can get students to talk about racial affairs like Ferguson. So you would cite them as Facing History and Ourselves, the title of the video, Facing Ferguson, News Literacy in the Digital Age, period. And then you would have the container, YouTube, on 18th of August, 10:45 a.m. So it's considerably simplified. In the 8th edition, the place where a book is published or where a magazine is published has been taken out, unless it would cause confusion. Students used to always say, well, do I have to say New York City for Time magazine? Nah, you kind of knew that it was published there. You kind of knew that the New Yorker was published in New York. You kind of knew that, if it's something said Cambridge and it's Harvard University Press, it's Massachusetts. So pretty much MLA has gotten reasonable about this. The only place where you still have to name the city where of a publication is where people might not know where that city is or where it might be confused. If something is published in Berlin, New Jersey, a town very near where I grew up, for example, you would say Berlin, New Jersey, just to avoid any confusion from Berlin, Germany, just so that people would know. But that's the only places now where you have to put the publisher's name, the publisher's location along with the publisher's name. The MLA has also taken out some of its fussy little things that used to drive people nuts. For example, many times on a website you can't find the place or the date where that website comes from, and you used to have to put in NP for no place and ND for no date. Well, now you don't have to do those anymore. You don't have to put those information in. Now you give the full publisher's name, so it's not just it's Boynton Cook, not just Boynton, or Harcourt Brace Jovanovich instead of Harcourt. But you do drop the businessy words, company and things like that, incorporated. Those get dropped. But you keep the abbreviations for university presses. U for Harvard U or Cambridge U. P for the University of Colorado Press. You'd say U of Colorado P, and you use UP for University Press, etc., etc. And this was one that used to drive people nuts about documentation. A and in the, if they are part of the name of the periodical, now get capitalized. So it's the New Yorker, not the lowercase New Yorker. And that's just a consistency thing that's needed to come for a long time. So the major changes in MLA style have been with the works cited list. What's changed about the parenthetical citations is much smaller list, so you'll be happy to know that you only have to learn a couple of things about these. First of all, you still need parenthetical citations after any source use. So after a direct quotation, after a paraphrase, after a summary, you must have a parenthetical citation. And you still need to introduce your sources with a signal phrase, according to Breitbart, or Donald Trump argues that, or something like that. You must have a signal phrase. That's required. You still don't use a comma inside the parentheses between the name of the source and the page number. So it's still Hate 166. Or if it's a website or something like that that has no page numbers, it's just Snopes.com or whatever you've put in your parentheses. No commas in there. But, and here's really the biggest change as far as I can tell in parenthetical citations. When you're summarizing an entire work and you have named both the author and the name of the source in your summary, you don't need to put in a parenthetical citation as well. You can just say, in The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt argues that our moral judgments arise more from our instincts and emotional reactions than from reasoned, disciplined thinking. Since you have named the source, the book The Righteous Mind, and the author, Jonathan Haidt, in your citation, then you don't need to have a parenthetical citation essentially duplicating that material following it. This is going to be the one that's a little bit tricky, and if you're ever in doubt about whether you need the parenthetical citation or not, always include the parenthetical citation. It's much better to over-document than to under-document. Now, we all are going to have to learn this new series, and it's not going to be easy. There is a new edition of the MLA Handbook. It's available. You can buy it at the bookstore. You can buy it online. It costs $12. It's a good book to have. And we will have in the Winthrop custom edition of Rules for Writers, the Handbook for Writing 101, with students beginning in August of 2016. They will update the MLA section in there. If you have an older handbook, hang on to that handbook, because there are other places you'll be able to update that one section. There will be handouts from the Writing Center and Dacus Library. Those are in the process of being updated right now. You can always go to the Purdue Online Writing Lab, the Purdue OWL. The link for it is right here. And the way you're really going to learn this is the way everybody's going to learn it. Whether you're a student, a teacher, a beginner, an experienced researcher, we're just going to have to start using it enough to learn to use it. And that's a bit of an aggravation, but hey, we're smart, we can all do this. I hope this little overview has helped you understand the basic changes between MLA 7 and MLA 8, and wish you the best of luck as you go through your classes and you document your material effectively.